it's me, Katie Noel, and I'm here with another story. So, today's fairy tale is one of my all-time favorites. It's an English fairy tale by the name of Mollie Whuppie. And, spoiler alert, like every other English fairy tale, I'm pretty sure like out of every 2 English fairy tales, one of them is about killing giants. Why? I have no idea. Maybe there were giants in England at some point in time. That's my current running theory. This story, though, is a little different than most of England's other giant killing stories. It's the tale of Mollie Whuppie, right? So obviously not one of the 5 giant killers named Jack. Of those, there's Jack the Giant Killer, which is different Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, which is a different Jack from some other guy named Lazy Jack who didn't kill giants, but still was named Jack, because way to be creative, England. Anyway, I got some tea for myself and switched up the position a little. Hope nobody minds. I just really like tea and storytelling, so why not combine 2 of my favorite things? Okay, so this is, obviously it's from England, and it's definitely, interesting in that the giant seems a little different than his other, giant counterparts. So we'll just pay attention. Alright, so, once upon a time, as all good European fairy tales must begin, there was a man and a woman who had too many children, which is something that plagues fairy tale married couples everywhere. So they took the 3 youngest and left them in a wood, which is apparently the all-time greatest way to get rid of your children in medieval Europe. They traveled and traveled. They walked and they walked, but they couldn't find any houses or places where people lived. Finally, after walking and walking and walking, they saw a light and a house, and they went for it. They knocked at the door, and a woman came, a regular woman, not a giant-sized woman. This is one of the twists. And she said, "What do you want?" And they begged, "Please, please let us in and give us something to eat." The woman said, "I can't do that. As, like, my man is a giant, and he'll eat you when he comes home." But they begged even harder. "Please let us stop for a little while. We'll go away before he comes." So she took them in, she gave them milk and bread, but just as they had begun to eat, the floor shook, and a great knock came to the door, and a dreadful voice said, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of some earthly one," which I can tell they didn't say Englishmen, because they're women. Whoa! Plot twist! And then, "Who have you there, wife?" Said the wife. "It's 3 poor lassies. They're cold and hungry. You won't touch 'em, man." So, he said nothing, and watched while they ate a big dinner, and he ordered them to stay all night. Now, he had 3 daughters of his own. Sorry, this fairy tale's kind of twisted. I'm warning you ahead of time. And they were to sleep in the same bed as the other 3 young ladies. The youngest of the 3, because the youngest is always the smartest in fairy tales. I mean, it's true in my family. There's 3 children, and the youngest is definitely the smartest one. Way to go, Brian. But apparently, fairy tale logic sometimes applies to real life. The youngest of the 3 girls was named Mollie Whuppie, and she was very clever. So she noticed that before they went to bed, the giant gave 3 straw, like, rope necklaces to her and her sisters, and 3 gold chains to the giant's daughters in the night. So, like, before they went to bed. So Mollie made sure she didn't fall asleep, and when everyone else in the house had fallen asleep, she very quickly switched the the necklaces, the ropes, and the gold chains between them and the giant's daughters, which is pretty smart. And so in the middle of the night, the giant came. He felt around for the straw necklaces in the dark, and he dragged his own daughters out of bed and beat them to death. Told you this was gonna get dark. Sorry, guys. But, you know, these giant fairy tales usually are pretty dark. Seriously, were there giants in England at some point in time? Why are there so many giant stories? Anyway, sorry. It's a mystery to me, okay? Anyway, so Mollie thought it was about time that she and her sisters left. So she waited until the giant went to bed, got up very quickly, woke up her sisters, and they disappeared into the night. They ran and they ran, and they never stopped until they got to a grand house, which, by the way, was a king. Because I'm guessing this fairy tale came from a time when kings were like, you could throw a rock and hit them. I guess, because, like, apparently that's how it was in medieval times. There was a king every stone's throw. So Mollie went in and told her story to the king. And the king said, well, Mollie, you seem to be very clever, and you have managed very well. But if you go back, which, great, if you go back to the giant, and you steal the giant's sword that hangs above his bed, then I will let my oldest son marry your eldest sister. So Mollie was like, you know, worth it. So she goes back to the giant's house, slips in to underneath his bed and waits. So just as he went to sleep and was snoring, she reached above his bed, grabbed the sword, and then ran as quickly as she could. The giant heard the rattle and jumped up after her and ran until they got to something called the Bridge of One Hair, which I'm guessing was a bridge so tiny that the giant could not cross it. And so once she got over the Bridge of One Hair, the giant yelled after her, like, "Woe worth ye, Mollie Whuppie," which is like super, super fairy tale talk. Ancient times talk, I guess. Never you come again. So, and she says, "Twice yet, Carlet, will I come to Spain." Why Spain? I don't know. I guess the giant lives in Spain. And you can get there by a bridge. Fairy tale logic. So Mollie took the sword to the king, who apparently lives in Spain, and her oldest sister was married to the king's oldest son. Next, the king looked at her and said, "Well, you did a great job, Mollie. You seem to be very smart, but if you go back to the giant's house and steal the purse that is underneath his bed, then I will let my second son marry your second oldest sister." So Mollie thinks and says, "Oh, you know, worth it." And she runs back to the giant's house, but very quietly and sneakily. She waits until the giant has eaten his supper, until he is snoring and sound asleep, steals the bag from underneath his bed, and runs like the wind. But just as she was going out, he heard the door close, and the giant ran after her, and he chased her and chased her until she again got to the Bridge of One Hair and crossed it. Why the giant has not demolished the bridge at this point, I don't know. You would think he would get to that point by now, but no, he has not. From the other side of the bridge, he yelled once again, "Woe worth ye, Mollie Whuppie, never ye come again." So she shouts back, "Once yet, Carlet, will I again come to Spain." Oh, maybe the giant lives in Spain and the king is in England? I don't know, man. This is like, I feel like the geography here is a little, it needs a little work. So after that, the king says, "You are awesome, Mollie, but if you can do one more thing for me, just one, then I will let you marry my youngest son." So he says, "Mollie, go and steal the ring, the giant's ring that he wears on his finger." And so Mollie was like, "You know what? Worth it." And she decides to travel back to the giant's house and steal a ring off of his finger. So if she doesn't get married, apparently she can just start like her career as like a, you know, like the greatest thief that ever lived in medieval times or something. I don't know. A+, Molly. So the giant, she goes back to the giant's house and hides herself underneath the bed. The giant, it wasn't long before the giant came, ate a big supper, and went to bed. And as soon as he was snoring loudly, Molly crept out and reached over the bed and got a hold of the giant's hand and pulled until the ring came off. But just as she got it off, the giant got up and gripped her by the hand and said, "Now I have caught you, Mollie Whuppie, and if I had done as much ill to you as you have done to me, what would you do to me?" So Molly thought about it. I guess she had a contingency plan. She said, "I would put you into a sack, and I would put the cat inside with you, and the dog inside with you, and a needle and a thread, and a pair of scissors, and then I would beat you to death until you were dead." So the giant, realizing Molly is smart, decides to do exactly what I don't really, like, this guy is not the brightest tool in the shed, let's just put it that way, right? So he puts Molly in the sack with the cat and the dog and a needle and a thread and a pair of scissors, and then he goes off to find the biggest stick he can find to beat her to death with. And while she's in the sack, she sings over and over again, "Oh, if you could see what I see. Oh, if you could see what I see. Oh, if you could see what I see." And the giant's wife is very curious, and she says, "Molly, what do you see?" But Molly never said anything except, "Oh, if you could see what I see." The giant's wife begged and begged Molly to see what she saw, so Molly agreed. She cut open the sack with her scissors, gets out of the sack, puts the giant's wife into the sack, and sews her right back up. "Molly," said the giant's wife, "I don't see anything." However, Molly did not pay attention and hid herself behind the door. The giant came back with a tree in his hand and began to batter it. And his wife cried out, "Oh, it's me!" But because the dog was howling and the cat was screaming, he couldn't distinguish his wife's voice. And Molly came out from behind the door and ran. And because the giant saw her out of the corner of his eye and took off after her. At this point in the tale, they do not make it clear if the giant's wife is alive or dead, and I would like to point out that Molly is a murderer. Molly is a murderer. She's cool, but like, seriously? Seriously? Anyway, so they ran and they ran until they came to the somehow intact Bridge of One Hair. And she crossed the bridge, and the giant yelled back at her, "Woe on ye, Mollie Whuppie, never you come again!" And then, "Nevermore, Carle," she said, "will I come to Spain." And so Molly took the ring to the king, married the youngest son, and they lived happily ever after, where the youngest son was probably completely terrified of her, because, wow. I love this story. It's a little disturbing, but so is Jack and the Beanstalk if you really think about it. And I think it's pretty fun. Even there's some logical problems, definitely, that I sometimes wonder why the giant didn't just demolish the Bridge of One Hair, because then she couldn't come back, I guess. But anyway, I guess she's clever enough that she would have tried to figure a way around it. And considering all the failed Jack and the Beanstalk movies, I really think it's time maybe we made a Mollie Whuppie movie. Don't you? I think so. Anyway, this is Katie Noel, signing off. If you want to click below and subscribe and hit the little bell icon so that you get notified every time that I post. I upload on Fridays, and I'll see you next time with another story.